Afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com. My name is Neil of Simpson Family Jeeps.
Is it though?
It is absolutely Neil. Neil. Neal. It's really Neil, but you know what? So many years ago, I just gave up and I just let people spell it however the wind, the spirit moved them.
Yes.
And I'm joined in Grandma's Couch Studio with some dapper gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. the mad scientist Scott Brown over there, just and that producer guy over there, Jeff.
Producer guy Jeff.
Yep.
And we are live.
My name's Jeff.
We are live on
Davey.
the Book of Faces and YouTube. And you can join us every Monday, roughly every Monday at 10:19 a.m. on the fastest growing automotive and Jeep specific podcast in the universe.
As voted by Neil's mom.
As voted by my mom.
I just want to say it would have been 10:19 today had someone not hit me with the random, can we see if we're actually playing in Antarctica? And I'm answering the question. I look back at the clock. I'm like, I got to hit play.
Listen, folks.
That's a producer question.
That is a producer question. One that I think the producer
It is, but he
timed
it. He timed it to, I had to answer during the last seconds before I should make us live.
So, I mean,
on purpose.
And because of you guys, because of our listeners, because of our dedicated force that we are so thankful for and so much appreciation for, we are in 6 continents in 60 plus countries around the world. Mm-hmm. And that is because of you all. And so we thank you for that. But we are on the hunt, much as the grand 7 slots of our Jeep Starship.
Doesn't look right with 6 slots.
It doesn't look like right with 6 slots. We need 7. And so we are on the hunt for listenership in Antarctica. So
just need you to go down there and download a couple episodes and go play with the penguins, whatever you need to do.
Whatever you need to do. Go for a hike or sleep in the snow.
Yeah.
Anywho, we got a doozy of a podcast for you all today. Mm-hmm. And a program. And Jeffrey is fresh back from Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So if you recall last week, he left here and jumped on a plane and flew out to Vegas, did a banger for a few days out there, came back, finished out the week strong. And he's back, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that. What is SEMA? You might have heard us go there before, saw some of the footage, the coverage. And we're going to be talking about where do the builds go?
Yeah.
It's a 2-part series, right?
2-part series. So the first part we're going to talk about is SEMA this year versus the past, trends and reflections. Mm-hmm. Then we're going to go into next week. We're going to talk about the Jeep treasures off the beaten path and some of those museum finds and barn finds and stuff.
Yeah, where do the builds go? I'm pretty excited about this. Kind of speaks to my heart light, if you will, as far as the automotive industry and obviously Jeeps specifically. So,
well, before we get into this topic, obviously it was a big event, SEMA and everything like that. But we have a really big event coming up right here at SFJ 4x4. So
you're right.
What is that?
You're right. We've got a Christmas parade coming up.
Yep.
And it is Merry Grinchmas, as I understand, is the theme. The Grinch will be in attendance with us.
Yeah, I heard the Grinch is going to show up. I don't think I'll be here, but...
No. We'll miss you and your family, and you'll obviously not get to enjoy the Grinch in the process. But,
but the Grinch will be here.
The Grinch will be here. We'll be bringing as many Jeeps as we possibly can. What's really cool about the Christmas parade, it's just a really neat environment where people are just in a good accord, right? Mm-hmm. We can kind of set aside any differences you have in life. It's dark. We're decorating our Jeeps. There's lots of twinkly lights. Everybody's wearing fun and funny hats.
Scott's definitely excited for it.
Oh yeah, I can see you're just all you're a gentleman as going.
They actually, him and his wife decorated the Jeep last year. And
his wife decorated it, but yes.
That's true.
Yeah, but he was excited about it.
He was actually pretty happy.
Because he's got the new Gladiator truck. He can do more decorating with it. He's gonna...
Has a power inverter.
I think he's gonna try to knock it out of the park.
He's gonna knock it out of the park.
I think so.
Okay.
I think he's setting us up.
Possibly. I mean, I love how everybody comes back each year and they kind of, want to plow back a little bit more into their Jeep, or they want to do absolutely nothing and just hang out with us and drink hot chocolate, and
that's fine too.
And that's fine too. So if you come in, we'll have the Christmas tree set up, we'll have music going, there'll be hot chocolate and maybe some snacks. You can kind of see what's going on in the shop. It's definitely a really cool time. It's an open house environment, so kind of come and go as you please. And we look forward to seeing you here. It's really less than 3 weeks away. So
crazy, right?
Put it on your calendar and make it a priority. It is Black Friday, starting at 4:30 p.m. here at the shop, to my knowledge.
Yep.
Okay.
And just jumping into the comments, because we didn't do that yet. Derek got first, so good morning, gents.
Good morning,
to Derek. Daddy Jeep, good morning, Jeeple.
Good morning.
Jaga Jeepers, good morning, SFJ. Eric Elliott, good morning, gentlemen. Roy Hill, good morning, buddies. And James Vick, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning to all of you. And last little plug, I actually am rocking the Any Season hoodie. Scott left his at home, I think, because he's ashamed of it, of his jerky.
Just want to get it dirty.
I'm still wondering where my beef gravy hoodie is.
So, and understand that those hit the market last week. The pre-orders did, and right now, percentage-wise, the Any Season hoodie, which obviously you can start as early as Halloween, because we have a zombie and a turkey and a Christmas tree, all represented on this hoodie.
Get to wear it all fourth quarter.
You get to wear it all fourth quarter, Q4. This hoodie is applicable, right? It is outselling the Stuffed with Adventure by like 110%.
You're making me sad, people.
There has been an order for it, or there will be an order for it.
Order.
Order. But we've had quite a few people. We have quite a few people come for this ugly Christmas sweater inspired Any Season hoodie, which is
just
super cool.
fun.
It's super fun, and it comes in beef gravy brown.
Yep.
Christmas tree green.
Turkey gravy.
And turkey gravy. Okay. That's your colors. That's the colors we're talking about. So I've got the turkey gravy hoodie on, which obviously is Scott and I should not wear, but
no, you had it filthy the first day when we were trying to advertise
it was
them.
Dust or soot or I don't know, something on the sleeve. But so we have turkey gravy, we got beef gravy, and we've got Christmas tree green. The one criticism that did come in, and I did have a criticism, and so I want everybody to know that I read just about everything. So, I see you. That the Christmas tree is backwards. Per our state award-winning Christmas tree growers of Greg's Christmas Tree Farm and owners of the YCJ, that tree is officially backwards.
Really?
Now, it is the iconic, it is a manner in which we iconically strap Christmas trees to vehicles.
Correct.
But from the Christmas tree professionals.
Well, it's also not wrapped and it's decorated, so that's my hit the ball back in their court.
I'm still trying to understand why would it be backwards?
Because they normally wrap it and it's stronger the other way.
Well, and you want either your root bulb or the trunk facing forward, and it's wrapped, and so the wind is pushing, because you always want them, because you pull it through the house.
It'll break branches that way.
Yeah, it'll break branches going this way, because you're folding the branches in a non-appropriate. And I, as the only real tree purveyor of the group, I can contend.
What's a real tree?
If my tree is not growing in a field right now, then I don't want it in my house. That's just how it works. All right. So anywho, folks, SEMA 2024. We saw some coverage online. You might have saw, some YouTubers posting who knows what gobbledygook. They all cover the same.
I was going to say
stuff
all the same stuff over and over and over
That's
again.
honestly part of what we're talking about today, and arguably next week, or maybe some of the things that you don't always see. And honestly, should the chips fall right for next year, Greg, lead performance mechanic Greg, had suggested that that if I end up back out there with Davey, that we should do content on what everybody isn't covering.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of fun. It's an interesting.
Greg has the best ideas.
Oh my gosh, Scott really has the best ideas. But
well, and honestly, it was a heck of a trip. Greg and I got out there. We arrived at the convention center at 7 a.m. Vegas time. It doesn't start till 9 a.m.
Yes.
And you know what they said? You're excited, but you're not coming in anyway.
You shall not pass.
We were not allowed to enter the building, but we did get an opportunity to walk all the lots.
Yes.
So we got a jump start on SEMA, and what we covered ground-wise last year in a week we covered in a day this year. We were both pretty sore by the end of it, but we had an opportunity. We made it through every hall of SEMA, all of the lots on day one. And we did.
I think you were sprinting. You were not doing productive things. It sounds like you sprinted.
So we did actually.
You just shouldered people in the process,
well,
just throwing bows and head down.
You did Jeff things.
That
What
may
were,
have
what were you
happened.
just trying to get your steps in? Like what?
Oh, I was not trying to get my steps in. So with taking pictures and video and holding the phone most of the day, I still had 30,000 steps in for the day. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot. So anyways, we actually did. We stopped and talked with a few different people along the way. Got to hear about some exciting new products. That was our biggest thing. Was right at 9 a.m. when the doors open, we just beeline straight for the back corner where the new product section was, and we went through that first new product section immediately and had those pictures uploaded to Davey within the first hour.
Sure. Well, and I was going to mention for folks who were, looking in from the outside or so, there was significant construction at the convention center grounds. And so
It made it very challenging to figure out how to get into the areas that we normally go into.
And as I understand it, it basically cut the outdoor space by 40 or 50% as far as
On the North Hall section, it did for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was the entrance. I don't know if you can picture it, and for our listeners, when you're coming down off the monorail, you get to kind of oversee the convention center.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're looking over towards the where it makes a nice 90-degree corner, and there's this beautiful entrance, that was all gone. That was under construction.
Wild.
They had the walls pushed out, and there was a way around them to get in somewhere over there, but for the most part, we just used the other halls and walked through into it rather than dealing with the construction. The mistake that we made this year that it helped us get through everything is that we didn't wait in line for the loop on Monday.
Sure.
So we didn't take the Tesla loops underground, but that kind of hurt us for the next day because now our legs are more tired and we're trying to maintain that. And so day two, we actually went through. We got back to the convention center. We planned it a little better, so we got there right at 9 this time. And we had a specific goal of what we know we missed. We knew we missed the Toyos section, which is out back. I don't know if you remember that off the one little corridor.
Sure, that's fine.
You get that little carpeted walkway to it. So it was where the airbrush station was last year, if that helps you. So that was one of the areas we knew we had to get to, and there was another section that we really wanted to get back into and just double check with some of our suppliers that we haven't had a chance to talk to this trip. So then we went straight in at 9, went to Crown, talked with them for a little bit, went over to Dana, talked to them for a little bit. Nobody seemed to know how to get over to Apex with a shuttle. Everybody's like, oh, just take Uber or Lyft. A friend at Dana did tell us that there was a shuttle location that we could take. We went over to the shuttle, took that over to Apex. Everyone told me that Apex was going to be boring. Shame on all of you. I liked Apex.
So I'm going to interrupt real quick and say that for those who are listening in who are automotive inspired, first of all, we're going to cover what is SEMA and why you should be of interest at all. But also, Apex is a secondary show which seems to be related to SEMA, right? And so for the average kind of bird's eye view, they are actually one and the same. The way that they booth, the way that they display, the nature of being in Las Vegas, the whole thing. Right?
Apex is SEMA without all the cars.
And that is ultimately, Apex is for the manufacturers and SEMA is for the retailers and installers. And it's kind of the easiest way to kind of break them down. If you're thinking about manufacturing a part in the near future, you're probably going to find a business represented at Apex. There will be some display vehicles, but not the display vehicles of the artwork that all of your traditional social media influencers get all giddy about and have represented at SEMA. I actually, and I think it just has to speak to our personalities, I really like Apex as well.
Honestly, I think, and I could be wrong because I've never been to Apex before, but I feel like based on what everybody told me of Apex, that it's changed. that it is more oriented back to the retail side again and the service side, because they literally have a whole floor called Joe's Garage, and it's essentially a garage setup where they've got vehicles on lifts. You can go in and see the different equipment and decide if that equipment's good for your shop or not. The alignment racks, the body shop racks, all of it was all in there for you to actually see in action. So it, to me, was, yes, it's a manufacturing thing, but they tried to tailor it more towards everybody versus just manufacturers.
Sure. I guess for me, I really like Apex because, and I'm going to say this, I think it cuts the crap a little bit.
It does.
As far as SEMA, there's a lot of ego over at SEMA. There's a lot of people who are, rubbing elbows and playing politics of as far as, who knows who and who's doing what and name dropping. And, there's some things, like there's a time and place for some of that. But I think the real work gets done over at Apex. And
I would agree with just even the conversations I was listening in on and overhearing. It was definitely more business oriented, where SEMA is more social oriented.
And that's a wonderful delineation of the two. So what kind of builds did you see at SEMA that kind of jumped out to you?
I mean, there's always the fun ones. So there was the R2 Jeep 2, which was really fun, Star Wars inspired Jeep. But I think one of my favorites this year had to be the 6x6 that could crab walk, the JT 6x6. And it was parked with its wheels sideways. There's always things to talk about out there that they do on purpose. Quake is famously known for that. They had a Bronco without a tire on, sitting on the rotor, basically. And
on wood blocks for some reason.
And for some reason, that's exactly it. They wanted people to take pictures. They did a great job. They had the blackout graphics on it, so as you're walking by, you don't actually see who it is. You're snapping pictures, and then later people are looking at the graphics in the pictures and going, "Oh, what's Quake doing with that there?" So it was well done. They did exactly what they wanted. They got people to take photos and stop and ask.
Sure. And I think that's, if this is your first time tuning in and you're maybe not, exactly sure, I will take a moment to kind of explain that SEMA is the Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association. And it is or was specifically a show that was intended to be I don't want to say closed to the public, but it is closed to the public, but it is to support aftermarket businesses, right? So it is not an auto manufacturer's show. It is not the traveling shows that, that the primary, starship, mothership auto manufacturers put on at all the local urban cities where you go and see all the new vehicle releases. This is about, how you modify your vehicle after it's been built to factory specifications.
Yeah.
And, some years ago, the event was meant to make people talk, right? I mean, it's literally how it, how it kind of came to fruition.
It generates buzz.
And it generates buzz.
They put some of those most unique talking pieces outside where the general public can see them.
Sure.
But then they hide some of the really cool and really detail-oriented ones inside, the kind that you have to really look close and start dissecting what was actually done to understand how good of a build it is.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's what's, fun about it is it's really intended to be a comprehensive look in at the auto market and, what possibilities exist. And they use the vehicles as a platform or as the canvas to, kind of share with people what can be done with the vehicles. Now, is it always perfect? No. There was a era of what they like to call the Bluetooth drive shafts.
And they're still there.
And there was the SEMA fails. There was a number of pages dedicated to, because it was originally touted for these premier builders or premier build-offs to attend and showcase what they're capable of with some of the premier products available in the aftermarket.
And it's so funny too, because like talking about some of those things, you can tell when a vehicle didn't drive into its place.
Sure.
There was a couple where it still had the brand new tire stickers on it and had this much dirt where they just kind of shoved it back just a little bit after they dropped it off the trailer.
Sure.
And it's like, this is this thing is not functional.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that Scott can agree with me. I mean, we grew up, reading through all the different rags that were available because SEMA's been around 60s or 70s, if I recall. And I have some friends who attended in the 80s and 90s. It was very, very much geared towards the hot rod, the go fast market. 4x4s really didn't get involved until honestly just within the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, it was more of an afterthought almost of the aftermarket of the 4x4.
And because I do producer things, I had to fact check what our actual date was because I was curious. When did you say you thought SEMA was founded?
I thought like 68 to, I'm going to go with 68.
All right. Scott, you want to venture a guess?
I'll say 74.
63 was when it was founded.
Wow.
Okay. The first SEMA show was held in, wait for it, 67.
Okay.
You were spot on.
Yeah.
With 68, that's a heck of a guess.
Yeah, it's one of those rabbit holes I've fallen down before. I'm pretty interested in SEMA as a whole. Like if you just kind of like, if you were to ask me, where kind of my interest lies and whatnot, that's part of the market that I kind of care about. So I have looked somewhat into it. And the thing is, it was nothing what it is now, right?
Right.
The original intention is similar, that we want to create talking points. So we wanted to create a car show that was just for industry insiders, showing off what they can do, versus your local meet and greets.
Now, you kind of talked about it started off more of the hot rod scene, and it's slowly grown into the off-road market more. Still not about the off-road market, but it's definitely more so. One of the things that is really fun is to pick out what's the trend of the year and try to guess the trend as early as possible. This year, we were able to figure out that trend within the first 5 minutes of being there.
I think it's so funny that, I honestly didn't see this coming. So I thought it was interesting that you guys, that this was your feedback.
It blew us away, honestly. So this year's theme was Cybertrucks.
And this is an unofficial theme, folks. So
there's no actual...
This is not actually a theme.
But so we recognize from going there over the years, especially you and Greg, and then me just last year alone, seeing the trend last year and then seeing it immediately this year. Last year's trend was the Broncos. It was the year of the Broncos. This year was Cybertrucks, and they literally were everywhere. I didn't even know that so many Cybertrucks existed.
Right?
It was incredible. And I think the trucks are ugly. So I think I picked up on it right away because as we're walking through, I'm like, oh, look, a Cybertruck. Oh, look, another. Why are there so many of these stupid Cybertrucks everywhere? And they actually did have some really, really fun themed ones. They had a cop one there that was all decked out with the lights hidden in it. And they had the lights going, of course. But spectacular designs on these. I just don't like the truck.
I was talking with some friends over the weekend about it, and they were like, how many things are there to do to modify a Cybertruck? I said, I didn't know of any, honestly. I thought
honestly it was almost all cosmetic stuff.
Well, and I thought even from a cosmetic standpoint that it had so many sensors and proximity awareness and whatnot that you really couldn't add stuff to the outside
Well,
of
it
them.
didn't have to operate to get there.
Well,
That's also true.
that's true.
And there was the Cybertruck row. It had to have been probably somewhere in the vicinity of 10 to 20 Cybertrucks all lined up. Every single one was a different color.
Huh?
I was like, I didn't even know it came in different colors. I've only seen it in the silver.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It was fun.
What's interesting is that via my social feed, I have not seen any of this coverage. So for you guys to come back and be like, it was all Cybertrucks everywhere.
It was actually kind of funny. I watched a YouTuber, obviously doing SEMA coverage, and they kind of panned past, and there was a 1 ton, air quotes, 1 ton Cybertruck. So it had dually fenders and bud wheels on it.
No.
Yeah.
And he was just like, oh, and that was it.
Yep.
That was his response.
Wow.
He was so enthusiastic about it.
Well, and in the comments here, Zach's saying it was good to see you guys this year. Missed you, Neil. He was Monday or Tuesday when we were there. He was swamped.
Yeah.
And
that's what you're saying.
I honestly felt bad for how busy he was with no help. I mean, he was eating cold lunch by the time we got there.
Yeah.
And that was while talking to other people. So
it can be a fast-paced environment, to say the least. You know? And so what other builds were there? I mean, like I said, from years past, we had the year of the J, not the J truck, but the JT,
Yeah,
right? A couple of years before
so
that.
last year was the Broncos. The year before that was the JTs.
We had COVID somewhere in there.
Yeah, JLs was the
JLs
one
were in
before
there
that.
somewhere.
So there's been a running theme, whether it's intended or not. And this year,
I think it's all about, kind of bringing something either really fresh to the market, and so like standing out, or honestly showing that, I don't want to say that you fit in, but the idea that that you're among this upper echelon, right? Because I mean, we're talking about Cybertrucks. That's not cheap stuff, right?
No, those are.
And even when the JTs came out, they were going out and they were buying top end packages.
Even Zach's saying Cybertrucks everywhere,
right? I mean, the idea that, and what kind of frustrates me is you go out and you buy a brand new vehicle and you can unbolt the suspension and you bolt something back in its place, and now all of a sudden that's a SEMA build,
right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's still the discredit of the 4x4 market. I mean, obviously, when I started going out there, which is not quite 10 years ago at this point, but it's remarkable to think that we're pushing that. That the 4x4 section was this kind of back corner of a second floor hall that, I mean, it was almost like, it's pitiful to think about where we started as an industry, and our hall continued to grow and started to push outside, and that was really remarkable. And then overlanding actually got its own space because it became so popular.
Yep.
And it's been interesting to see how the industry has ebbed and flowed. I think
at this point, the off-road industry owns the West Hall.
Right. I think,
and that is huge.
I think it's exploded in that sense. But the discredit to the off-road industry is a lot of these companies, they're just happy if you've bolted on their products on a Jeep or a vehicle that is currently relevant.
Yep.
Whereas the hot rod market is still doing these spectacular artwork pieces.
Totally a one-off custom kind of stuff.
Custom one-off stuff.
Oh yeah.
And those are the builds that have always kind of garnered my attention. I have an appreciation for them.
Yep.
I'm amazed. I've met a couple builders over the years who actually, they're local to the area, and so they actually just keep bringing back the same vehicle year after year, which is also fascinating to me. Because they were like, yeah, well, this part wasn't done last year, and this wasn't done, and I added these fenders, and I put a turbo on this engine, and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff in our industry where it's like it's one and done.
Yeah.
Among the off-road industry, it's like, well, if we saw that, Jeep or truck or Bronco or whatever, well, that was last year and we don't ever get to use it again. Whereas I've talked to a number of people in the hot rod of the go fast industry, it's the same vehicle showing back up, and they've modified it. They've done some stuff. They did some land speed. What's the next level that they took it to, And I'm very fascinated because there still appears to be a disconnect between the expectations of the 4x4 market and in the hot rod go fast market.
Yep.
Is there anything that from your coverage that you saw, Scott, that the builds that stuck out to you?
I have a build that makes my eye twitch, but then at the same time I can appreciate the build.
Let me take a guess. The flat fender.
Yes.
I
can appreciate, especially from working sheet metal, how much work it was to custom make a flat fender that for most people that didn't go would just see a picture of and go, oh, it's a flat fender, because there's no perspective. There's no you almost need that quarter in the picture so you can have a size reference.
Right.
But I told Cazelle right away, it's way too big. The seats aren't proportional to the Jeep.
Yep.
The doors is stretched, and I've lived through the how to take your flat fender off-roading.
And this was, so that everyone's aware, this was in the JKS booth.
Yes.
And it was the only Jeep-like thing they had.
Yep.
And they had a small little, just a real small display of Jeep parts. Everything else was all focused on trucks. They didn't care about Jeeps this year.
Yeah.
But
JKS or Fox?
JKS.
Yep. Interesting, because JKS has never had their own booth, so
well,
I didn't follow their coverage.
Sport truck JKS. So the section of JKS was in Sport Truck's booth.
Interesting. Okay.
And then Fox was actually its own booth, diagonal from that.
Okay.
But it was in the JKS booth.
Interesting. JKS BDS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Okay.
So any record, it was a green or a forest green flat fender, air quotes.
Air quotes. He's doing air quotes, folks. Can't see him.
And they basically took a flat fender and put it in a growth ray and made it bigger, except for the actual parts where you would sit and that, and made it be on like full width newer Jeep axles or something. It was really kind of hard to tell. I believe it had a newer V8 motor in it, which again, that was another red flag for me. It was like, wow, look how much room is in the engine compartment.
I do want to comment. Zach said, JKS is a Fox factory company, which, yes, we were just splitting up where that booth was, and how it was laid out. Because Fox had a dedicated Fox booth as well as the dedicated JKS BDS booth.
Right.
So my mad scientist iTwitch is flat fenders are kind of our 32 Ford or our vintage Roadster or something like that. If you're into the hot rods, you kind of know what I'm talking about. It's the boss Mustang of the Jeep world. So part of me is saddened when we play with the purity of the flat fender so much that we've not made it a flat fender anymore. I can understand why, because we've all, me and Neil have owned stock-ish flat fenders, and they're not roomy by any stretch of the imagination. So I can understand it, but a part of me is real sad inside when, and I'm sorry for this, but even if you just stretch the door opening and you make it so you can get in and out easy, you've ruined the proportions of the flat fender. Like now it makes my eye twitch and I can't unsee it.
I think my favorite part about it though was we had got the pictures of that on Tuesday.
Yep.
Wednesday, we were over at Apex, and Davey messages me. And mind you, while at SEMA, I have T-Mobile, which is extremely good signal out there, but it's so congested that it makes it difficult to send messages out. So even though I've got full strength signal, everything's slow. So I didn't know what pictures made it to Davey, what didn't, but he asked, hey, can you go over by JKS and get that flat fender picture at some point? I'm like, I got it already. So I just sent it to him really quick, the 3 pictures, and it immediately hits me back. What frame is it? Is it a JK frame underneath? Nope.
And that's because Davey immediately, the troll he is, called me over and he's like, hey Scott, you see this? what do you think about this? Because he knows at this point, and I see it. My eye starts to twitch. Oh, I see it's got a newer suspension. Like, well, Davey, what frame is it on? Well, I don't know. I'll message Jeff and ask. So that's why all that happened.
I just literally hit him back with custom. Just one word, custom.
Well, I think it's interesting because when we talk about builds of the past, and you're talking about, proportions and whatnot, there was that, I don't remember what they called it, Big Tom or something.
Yeah.
Where they attempted to make it all proportional, but basically it was a flat fender that was, I don't know, 2 times the size of what it realistically should
have
be.
been.
And they even made huge seats for it and everything. And it blipped on my radar not long ago, where I thought I saw it cruising in the desert somewhere. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting, because the struggle that I have, and I think it was interesting when we started talking about this topic, is where do these vehicles go, right? There are these beautiful, iconic. Now, one that stuck out from years ago was this incredible C10 with just the most spectacular camper, that slide camper, and it was all period correct, and the C10 was slammed, so full size GM based pickup truck for those who are listening who might not know, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. Must have been, $250,000 to 400,000 went into the restoration of the truck and the camper. And I kid you not, within the last 6 months, I saw it blip up on some type of, hot rod inspired page where somebody was actually camping out of this thing and using it for what it was built for, And I was like, good for them. Like, that is awesome to see that this thing is still making the rounds.
And
is still
actually functional enough.
It is actually functional enough because, because I think that sometimes or oftentimes things are thrown together haphazardly to make a statement.
Yep.
Or I'll be honest with you, as an industry professional, when I see kind of a lesser known business who just kind of all of a sudden gets promoted to be a SEMA builder or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, this used to be a SEMA build. I'm like, okay, well, that kind of,
That's not a good thing.
that doesn't mean that that's necessarily a good thing,
Right,
unless you really kind of transparently showed off what you were doing with it, and maybe went and used it somewhere or showed something. I mean, we've definitely seen some stuff that's just bolted together, bubblegum and duct tape.
And then there's some other ones that are actually really decent builds. I mean, I really like Fred Williams' build in the Dana Spicer booth. I see Zach brought it up in the comments. It was actually a really fun, clean build.
Did he? Because he brought a Big Willie, which is the Jeep that I was talking about.
Yep, no, up above.
Oh, okay.
They said that's why we loved having Fred Williams build in the Dana Spicer parts booth. It was actually a really fun build with the wooden bed and the wooden gates on it. I like that style.
Definitely something more unique in the process.
It was unique. If I remember correct, there were so many vehicles. If I remember correct, it was just on a JT frame.
Yep.
And he would probably clarify more of that. But it was a fun build.
Sure.
And
I think
well done.
And that's because ultimately, the ones that kind of stand out to me or others in the process are going to be the ones that are more unique, that are more talking points, that have a little more of legacy or character to them.
Yeah.
It's like I said, God bless American Force and folks who, may or may not be aware. They do a lot of the big truck, wheel and some tire stuff. And those are the trucks that really took a beating on the internet for being Bluetooth drive shafts a few years ago. And I grew up, as a purveyor of truck nationals and the big 4x4 roving shows that ran from coast to coast.
Yeah, triple roll bars,
and 6 shocks per corner and big beautiful dualies that didn't make sense. And this is kind of the modern day version of that. And I always used to tell people they're meant to be an artist's canvas. They're not really a big, super functional truck. Are some of them functional? Absolutely. But are they over the top functional? Probably not. You don't see a hotshot hauler, running their coast to coast or their north to south trip in one of these big trucks. And the challenge I have is that arguably, like the Cybertrucks, there's so many of these American Force trucks of sorts. They make a presence. They represent the brand well, but the build kind of fades into obscurity because, quite frankly, I don't know who did what with what. They all kind of start to blend together and look the same. And I'm certainly years later, I'm not conjuring up, kind of a statement piece build. Like I just saw this recently, and where is Kenny Hawk in the world? Nobody knows. But talk about a guy that everybody in the industry fawned over for a hot second and then overnight faded into obscurity.
Yep.
And everybody lost their mind. And it's just kind of a personal piece for me. It's like, I'd rather be kind of a consistent individual and have longevity and lasting power than kind of a flash in the pan. And I met Kenny years ago, 12 years ago or something, at a show out east. And super cool dude, had just built some really sweet rat-inspired Willys Jeeps, or was in the process of building, I should say. And he did some just incredibly creative, really cool, kind of off the wall, broke the barrier of talking points amongst the industry. And, I kind of applaud him for that. And he did very well for himself for a while and got notoriety as a premier builder for a period there. And so what brought this up to me was maybe 17 or 18, don't exactly remember. He had built the silver Jeep with the turrets. And I'm trying to remember what the name of that Jeep was. And it had a premier spot at every show that it went to because, again, it was so unique, so interesting. But I thought it was interesting because it was actually built out of a air quotes Gen 1 JK, which, most people at this point in time are not building, right? They're not building a 7 to 10 JK for any type of premier build. But of course, it was market relevant at that time.
Yeah, and it was different, so it caught people's attention. But that kind of something we've talked about. The build basically had a year, maybe 2 at the most, that it was relevant, and then after that, it was kind of like, okay, that's old hat.
I still remember when he put it up for sale, and everybody was like, "Well, what do we do with this now? Like, why? Like, you're selling it? Well, because then, and ultimately next week we're going to talk about why do you do that? What happens? Because he put it up for sale at a time, and I know that this number doesn't sound outrageous at this point, but it was like 60 to 80,000.
Yeah.
It was heavily modified, and it had some cool aftermarket stuff going on. But it was an art piece more so. And so what do you do with that art piece? Do you go wheel it? Do you do,
do you set it in a museum?
Do you go to the hayfield and run back and forth with hay bales and tools to fix your farm equipment? Like that's such an interesting concept that kind of not everybody thinks about. We see the American Force trucks in the booth, and it hammers home the namesake of the brand. But then what do you do with that vehicle after the show, after they shut the lights off and everything gets loaded back up on the trailers? What do you do with it? And that the lasting power of that particular Jeep I thought was interesting because, again, just within the last few months, I saw, and it was like, and this is probably does a discredit to Car and Driver magazine, but it was like a Car and Driver magazine, right? I mean, it's like Auto Trader. It was somebody who is now so surface level of the auto industry, Kelly Blue Book or something.
Yeah.
Using this Jeep as a magazine-esque cover photo for one of their marketing ads or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought, but first and foremost, I thought, man, whatever happened to Kenny Hawk? First of all, second of all, I thought, what happened to that Jeep? Because it was an old photo. I could tell. I was like, oh, I was probably there when that picture was taken. I kind of remember that, in the background. But it's just interesting because they command this presence, and then the lights turn, slowly fade out, and then they don't.
So speaking of fading presence and commanding presence, and Stellantis showed up big. And they brought the Easter Jeep Safari concepts.
Yes. Which, as who I am, in the past, I was honestly never that thrilled about concept vehicles.
Right.
Because I almost felt a level of disappointment because I was like, that's unobtainium. Like, we're not actually going to get that vehicle. And what I've now grown to appreciate is that we're going to get aspects of that vehicle.
Right.
We're going to get a version of the parts that are on them. You know?
And I think you particularly would have liked the wing lights that they had on the one.
Yeah.
It was across the windshield. It was a light bar of sorts, but it had these folding lights that you could literally aim different areas or point forward built onto it. And I feel like you would appreciate that. And some of our overland customers would really like something like that. It was a concept part, probably will never exist. Well, but the idea behind it was kind of fun, that it was a movable light bar of sorts.
Yeah. Well, you know what, to credit, the mothership and her subsidiaries of Ram and, some Dodge and Jeep, what they have done as far as the progression of what I'll call Mopar Underground through the concept vehicles, and obviously I have a YouTube video out there on the concept vehicles themselves and when and how we started seeing those vehicles materialize at Easter Jeep Safari specifically. They kind of have this pattern of how they release and tease us as an industry. There is a consistent pattern of them making product eventually available to us. And I think the refined nature of the product that is initially available from Mopar Performance and whatever kind of they identify, historically over the last 15 years or so. The biggest thing I have to tell people who are listening is that if you like a product that is provided, that you see at one of these events, that then finally does kind of make it to your local dealership or your aftermarket option from the mothership, that's probably only going to be available for about a year and a half. They run really, really limited production runs.
Yeah.
That's what history has shown me for some of these concept-inspired parts that actually do come to fruition.
We've talked about several different builds. I think what we need to do is have Davey, when he puts this on YouTube, put the pictures of the builds on it as part of his editing process that we talked about. So our listeners can actually go and find it on YouTube.
Sure.
And see what those builds look like that we're talking about. Because
there was a Wagoneer that right was one of the builds, a Wagoneer, like an Overland inspired Wagoneer.
Yeah.
And then there was a beautiful red. Was that a JL inspired one, or was it straight concept? I don't know. He did a nice post, a picture that you had shared with him. He did a nice post and got people riled up on the color, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's without going back through. I mean, there were so many vehicles, but I believe this is the one you're talking about on picture here. And we'll make sure to put this on air for our viewers later to go back and find it.
Yes. Yeah, that's a doozy. God, is that gorgeous.
Yeah, there's just some really fun, and that's a really nice red. They did a great job. Matter of fact, is that the one? No, that's not the one that had.
Well, yeah, there. Jeep, and I guess Stellantis as a whole.
There's your wing lights.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, which, as you mentioned, for the overland industry, that makes a big deal. Mm-hmm. And you look at the JK and how it naturally transitioned in the JL. There's a lot of aftermarket parts that have been adopted into the production of the JL in of itself. So they are listening. They are attending these shows and taking stuff home to the drawing board, if you will.
Well, with all the speculation going on about Stellantis and them doing layoffs and stuff like that, it was nice to see. I mean, they had a massive display set up. So it was good to see that there and see that they're still trying to be relevant in the market.
Yeah, interesting. I think it's interesting when it comes to some of those. Honestly, when we were talking about this concept, when we were in kind of internal discussion, there was a beautiful 6-door JL last year.
Oh, that was gorgeous.
And that
gorgeous.
It was also
so well done.
That
too.
FC was there as well, and we had a lot of fun with that. And in preparation of this, we were talking internally, and I said, I'm actually in a number of automotive groups that are dedicated to 6-door trucks and 6-door Jeeps, and there's a couple guys who are building extended JL platform Jeeps in there and everything. It's really cool. But that particular 6-door, which I think was that in the Real Truck?
It was in Real Truck's display.
Real Truck's display.
If I understood it correctly, they didn't have anything to do with it.
Right.
It was just there.
Which was really peculiar, right? And so this is kind of an interesting piece about the builds and where do they go, and what purpose do they serve? So you had this 6-door JL in the Real Truck booth, and a Real Truck,
and they had a Flex on a Race Rock.
They had Flex on a Race Rock, and they had Real Truck sells a number of brands. They've recently acquired Omix ADA, correct? Yep. They have Amp Steps as well as one of their lines. I don't remember who else they have off the top of my head.
They have a lot.
They have a ton of lines, right? And
some of those lines I don't think were under them last year at SEMA, but were in their booth sharing space, and I think that they just kind of acquired them since
part of their acquisition.
Of that.
But here's the thing, and this is a peculiar issue that I suppose I take a little bit of exception with some of these shows and how they're done, is that particular Jeep was displayed in their booth, and yet when you spoke to any of the salespeople or the informational people there who were available, none of them knew anything about the Jeep.
No.
They didn't know where it came from. They didn't know anything more than the placard that was written on it.
Correct.
Right? And I thought that was funny, and I'm not surprised by that now, because I hear more and more from reps, who are not able. They're like, somebody in marketing got this vehicle put in our booth. And it's like, okay, well, that's cool. And
I mean, it happened to even some of our good friends out there.
Correct.
Where we're in their booth looking over, and we're telling them more about the vehicle than they even know.
Yeah, they're like, we didn't even know if there's any of our parts on this. Right.
That literally happened this year. That exact conversation.
Yeah, I know, which is wild. And so, we're drooling over the Real Truck booth, which had, had this FC in it, and it had that 6-door. Now, here's the thing. I'm just focused on the 6-door. I'm in this group, and they find all the 6-doors across the country. There's guys like running down the highway and taking pictures of these extended vehicles, and you can pretty well. I mean, I'm not saying it's the most comprehensive group but this is a pretty small niche market, you know? And it's like, where did that Jeep go? And Greg's response was, dude, that's probably in the Middle East sitting in a garage right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is a fascinating, and because he's probably correct, because as I had already brought up some past builders, it is my understanding that when you get to a particular level, there are a number of vehicles that are just built here stateside that eventually just land on a shipping container and head overseas.
Yep.
And you know, and it's so interesting because we keep track of many of our customers, but we have absolutely had a handful have, you know, really elaborate vehicles built.
Well, and there's there's going to be one that we're going to talk about next week, and I'm just going to tease that it was a find. I'm not even going to say where, and then it was a Mecum sale X number of times.
Sure.
So that's a teaser for next week.
Sure.
We'll get into that.
And it's just interesting because
And we don't know where it went after that last
correct.
one. But
And the white, you know, 6-door, nobody knows. First of all, nobody could tell us anything about it at the show.
Right.
And then
it
from
was
there,
very mysterious.
where did it go? And it reminds me of a particular Jeep that was built. Then I understand it was at SEMA in 12, and it made the rounds with a number of Mopar inspired groups, and it was somewhere between 10 and 12, I should say, and it was a JKU on a 3/4 ton Ram chassis.
Yep.
And it had a flatbed, and I absolutely fell in love with it.
that sounds fun.
And it was a diesel, right? Well, as they all should be. And it was just, I mean, it was awesome. And so I actually knew this was built, I don't want to say as a concept vehicle, because it wasn't a concept vehicle. It was a Mopar underground build of that time. And it was meant to kind of be a showcase build that drew people's attention in. And I remember being at a number of shows, and it ran like a new diesel. It had, you know, 3/4 ton or 1 ton inspired running gear underneath of it, which, if you know anything about the Dodge platform, they actually 1 ton and 3/4 ton axles of that vintage are actually the same. It's just you have a dually adapter or not. So basically, you know, it was probably an AAM 11.5 inch ring gear in the back. So big, massive axle, and but single wheel. And I just remember it just idling along being like the coolest thing ever. Right. And so I knew one of the guys who was kind of on the forefront or on the development of that particular vehicle. And eventually years later, I said, whatever happened to that? And he was like, you know what? Honestly, I think that a friend of one of the engineers who worked on it bought it, and it is actually pulling horse trailers in Montana right now.
Of all things.
You know, well, but I thought, like, how interesting, because here was a vehicle that commanded magazine articles and picture taking and crowds of people at these shows and events, to be quote unquote retired to pulling horse trailers and being a work truck at a large ranch in Montana. You know, and it's so interesting to see where these builds, where they go, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they are still just vehicles, right?
Yep.
Are they all museum quality? Do they all deserve to end up in Jay Leno's garage or some other private collector?
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I think that
As Jerry Seinfeld going to take him on a Coffees and Cars video.
right. And I think it's funny because, like I said, I kind of cringe when I see Facebook listings and it's like, oh, this was a SEMA build in X, Y, and Z year. And I'm like, well, that doesn't actually sell me on anything,
No.
you know?
You know, there was one other one that was just super fun, and I hope somebody in our audience can tell me, because I think it was actually a vehicle from the original set of Back to the Future, the DeLorean. And I know I saw that, and I took pictures, sent them for Scott to see, because I mean, it was so well done. If it wasn't an actual prop from the movie, I'd be surprised.
Interesting.
The amount of detail that was put into this. It had a working flux capacitor. It had all of the dates and time gauges on the front of it. As Greg put it, the rainbow spaghetti of wires everywhere.
Sure.
It probably argues that it isn't then because I'm a nerd. I follow that a little bit, and the original cars weren't very well done. Surprise. There was like one really good car that was on the camera most of the time, or other ones were just kind of not. But there is such a cult following for that car, and actually the pickup.
So there was actually a couple DeLoreans there, but there was only one that
really stood out to
that's
you.
Back to the Future DeLorean.
And again, this is just kind of a funny thing, because we hear all the time, like, how are you actually just a specialized Jeep business? There is a business that turns DeLoreans into time machines and makes them accurate, or what they should be. And that is
I didn't know that.
That is their job. That is their purpose. They are way down that rabbit hole. They know all the little minutia of changes and differences. And you can literally, if you're Jerry Seinfeld and you love Back to the Future, you can have a time machine.
That is worse than the Jurassic Park people. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Oh yeah,
and
without question.
I think about that. 'Cause
Giaga Jeepers is saying there's actually 2 replica DeLorean cars built better than the movie cars.
there you go.
Yes.
And who knows? Maybe this is a third from SEMA. I don't know.
I
I don't know anything about it.
It was really good. It had the poster, the cardboard cutout of Marty McFly and Doc.
Yep.
And I was like, this is Scott right here. He needs to be here with this, get a picture with this
Yes.
car.
That is fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, what an interesting spectacle of vehicles that go on display. Some really, really well done. Some that are just kind of put together to be talking points or to do a little shock and awe.
Oh yeah.
I always appreciate the folks who try to drive them, either drive them there or drive them while they're there, or once they leave there, they go and try and put them to use, because that's an interesting thing in our industry to say, yes, you put all this time, energy, and effort into it, but at the end of the day, it is a vehicle. It is not actually a painting that is meant to just be visually consumed. It is meant to be worked and driven and utilized as the vehicle that it was originally intended to. So,
Yep.
Which I think that is a fair segue to lead us into our topic next week. If you thought this was interesting, we're going to be talking about why do people hold on to these builds, these projects. How does that trickle down from the top to the bottom? Is it in a museum squirreled away? Is it so it's a private collection? Is it a public museum?
Are you going to bring it to our Christmas parade?
Are you going to drag it into the Christmas parade build? Or is it just rotting away in a field somewhere because you just kind of can't let go of it?
Or is it in a pull apart?
Or is it in a pull apart, which some of these vehicles end up in? I had a fun conversation with a listener and a customer the other day. He actually found his first Jeep. It was an 86 Comanche that he had ordered new, and he found it in a junkyard. And he knew that it was his because in his ownership, this is back before we had all the plastic bumpers and you hit one little thing and the whole vehicle crumpled. He went off a ditch and he damaged his fender and his front bumper. So he used a stick of, square stock and built his front bumper. And as he was going through a junkyard, a pull apart, there was his Jeep. So he managed to acquire his horn button and maybe the part of the dashboard or something, a couple little things that were iconic to him in the process. Kind of neat,
Yeah.
But you'll have to look forward to more stories about the builds and what they mean to you and to us. Next week, you'll tune in and be part of that, hopefully. And we continue that countdown to the Christmas parade and the jerky stuffed with adventure hoodie and the Adventure Awaits or Season of Adventure Anytime hoodies. The battle rages on between them.
Yes.
So get those orders in, either turkey gravy, beef gravy, or Christmas tree green in the process. You can have your choice, your size, and your logo for $49.95. You just have to message our Facebook page or over to our contact form on the website.
And go Team Jerky, make mad scientists happy.
No.
Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
I had a very busy weekend.
It was so busy.
I'm glad that you guys had a busy weekend because after a week of traveling for SEMA, I was done.
Yeah.
I did
You're
not.
comatose.
And I got worried because I had a couple things where people are messaging me, hey, can you help with this? And can you help with that? And I agreed to it, but everything fell through and I didn't have to do anything. And I was happy.
Lame.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I was definitely channeling you because I have yet to buy a miter saw, a compound miter saw, which will make my life so much easier. I just have the old school chop miter saw.
Again, 10-inch or bigger. Don't go with a
No,
7.
and that's the problem is that I've got like a 7 1/4 standard chop miter, and I was just like, this isn't going to do the job for me for what I need to do next. And but long as I ended up working, outside. The weather was actually gorgeous Saturday.
Yeah, it was.
And still did not level the she shed, but did a whole bunch of other things with it. It's permanently leveled, I think.
Does it have a roof?
It does not have a roof yet. So I actually got all the sheathing done and fully nailed in. I ended up having to have help on the 16 on center on the sides and everything.
Yeah.
So we did all of that. Finalize the sheathing, not just put it up. I actually did a whole wrap on the house, cut out the doors, the windows, all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
And I did, because I am glutton for punishment. I called the folks, the builders who did my roof on the house, but I had a really nice conversation with them. Their driver is 80 something years old. And he's like, oh, yeah, they'll be able to do that for you. I'll get right back with you. And then that was Tuesday, and I never heard from them again. And I don't feel any type of way.
No, you're just going to go home, and it's going to be done, and you're going to be like, oh, I owe some money, apparently.
Well, which was what I was hoping for, right? Which was what I was hoping for. Because I said, I literally just want the exact same thing that was done just 2 years ago. I need it done over here, And that's exactly what I was hoping for.
A much smaller scale.
A much smaller scale, just boom. And I never heard from them, and they didn't show up on Saturday to just magically wave their wand and do it. So I took it upon myself to, I want to do the trusses on this. I wanted to learn. I think it's why do we build? Why do we, why, it's you and the body work and everything. I've started to put that process together. So we actually cut the trusses the way that the measurements, the numbers, the angles, the bird's mouth, compensated for the sheathing, set the peak, so I did all the things and I feel really, really good about it. And I am
awesome.
Excited to prioritize doing the roof at this point.
That's fun.
I am. I'm excited. Now, am I a little concerned about the leveling? I will have to admit that I am a little concerned about your super rudimentary leveling blocks.
My temporary blocks.
Yeah, with the one nail each situation.
You did it on purpose.
I literally did it on purpose because I wanted it to be temporary.
Yeah. So I don't know if I can add all the weight of the roof while it's still totally not leveled. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that it will be easier to level by picking it up or jacking it up
before you have the weight on it.
Before I have the weight of the roof onto it. So
I agree.
I just got to figure out how I'm going to actually solidly level it at this point, But I also had the opportunity to go visit my cousin's hot rod shop.
Oh, cool.
Which was cool. Because I did a little bit of hot rod stuff myself last week in the evenings. I was playing with the limo a little bit. Discovered something really unique that I have put out to my other old school fat body Cadillac guys, and come to find out they actually made special wheels just for my car.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So it literally says limo only on them.
So you can't actually just switch them out like you were hoping.
Correct. And I'm trying to find out why. So I've put it out to the hive mind of the internet to go, does anybody have any experience as to why what makes these limo only wheels. And right now the feedback that I've got is that they are actually just a heavier construction for an aluminum wheel. And of course you were around and modifying vehicles in the 90s. Aluminum wheels weren't awesome then.
No,
They were actually known for bending and breaking and cracking and other types of things.
but it is actually something I was exposed to. Another shop, they were working on a slightly newer limo in hearse than yours, but it's still Cadillac base, and it was actually 8 lug.
Yeah.
It had, but it was a Cadillac wheel. Like you would never walk up to and go, "Oh, that's a 1-ton suspension car."
Sure.
But then you pop the cab cap off, and suddenly there's 8 lug nuts sticking back at you.
Right, which is so fascinating. And like I said, for me, to find this limo only, I mean, it's actually cast into the wheel and everything. So I genuinely believe that I was under the impression that maybe it was because the hub bore was bigger, so a bigger hub assembly, for the
Which
reason you're
could
talking
be.
about. But we'll see. So I did that, and then like I said, so my cousin has put together a little hot rod shop, and he's obviously helped out here in the very beginning or the years ago and helped me do some cool stuff. And now he's really pushing forward into his hot rod builds and hot rod endeavors. So I got to kind of check out his space, and it's kind of fun seeing that organic excitement again, because I was there. I know exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat because he actually has a gantry crane entirely made out of 2x8s. 2x8, 2-inch by 8-inch tall by however long. And then he's got them sandwiched together so that then they end up being 3 or 4 deep. And he's got them all interlocked. And I just thought, man, that is the ingenuity of somebody who is trying to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're not leaving the limitations of finances and going, hey, I have wood, I have bolts, I have casters.
Yep.
I just need, I can put some steel plate together to make it kind of swing here or there instead of trying to like save up the money for a couple grand. Hey, I just need this gantry crane to work in the here and now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty solid little machine there. It's kind of neat.
Just in the comments, Daddy Jeep said put the limo on a set of Super Duty axles.
You know what? Everybody has mentioned that to me.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to see me lift it, and everything I have ever owned in my life has been, like, for the most part, 4-wheel drive or lifted or regular suspension. I want to go fast or faster and not in a 4-wheel drive application or slam something to the ground. I've never done it myself, and I kind of want to bag something, and I think bagging the limo would be really cool, and that's where I struggle. I also struggle because it's much rougher than I had anticipated.
Always.
But I found one in Harbor Creek, which is rust-free and low miles.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Here we go. So, anyways, what you said you had a busy weekend too, Scott. What did you do?
Well, so Friday was my daughter's 8th birthday.
Yes,
so
it was.
that was
Happy
Oh,
birthday, Evelyn.
That was
Speaking of,
busy.
your birthday's coming up too.
it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we went and had, my wife made this beautiful cake. It's always funny because she's like, "Oh, I can't do this," or "I'm not crafty," and then poof, this magic looking cake with chocolate drizzle and strawberry marshmallow topping and raspberry filling
Oh, I got
inside
real hungry.
Right.
was all poofed out of
Where's our taste test?
from like
Yeah,
2 o'clock.
I feel like that should have been a taste test.
There was none left.
Okay, well, I can
Scott ate
understand.
it all.
Yeah, right. I can.
No, I
understand
did
why.
not eat it all. But then she, of course, had to get Blue Moon ice cream and chocolate. Blue Moon's was more for me and my wife.
Blue Moon.
That's,
I was gonna say that's not why. Yeah, that's your ice cream.
Yeah. Well, we were excited because you can get it at Walmart now. So
Were you guys? Was it a mutual celebration? Were you kind of doing a you
No.
and Evie thing?
no,
Okay.
it was all letting her have her day.
Except for her ice
except
cream.
for the ice cream.
And well, she got chocolate. She was perfectly happy.
All right,
she was
that's fine.
perfectly fine. So she got all the Barbie, a small army of Barbie stuff.
Nice.
So she was all excited about that. And she got an axolotl that makes all kinds of noise. And I'm like 6 months into even knowing what an axolotl is.
Isn't that like a type of lizard?
I thought it was
Sort
a
of.
little Furby thing.
But she's all about them, so that was pretty cool.
So what is it?
It kind of looks like a salamander.
Like a real life animal, though.
Well, no, she got a toy axolotl
Oh, okay.
that
I
makes noise.
I can't wait for the Brown household to kind of
No.
transition into the homestead that the Shiramonte household is and their small farm.
So, and then Saturday I had work here. I worked on a fender for a project. Kind of on the Discord you'll see some more of that progress coming up soon. And then I offered Jeff this time, but he declined because he's scared of a certain board.
That's not.
So we went to with a couple friends to Erie, showed them a couple shops, and then we had dinner at Permani Brothers.
Permani?
Oh, I love it. That was
He asked me how to spell Permani Brothers,
he
and it was
he had
hilarious.
such a good show today, and then he just made sure to bring that up right at the end.
And there were
What did you
lots
get? What did you get at
of
Permani?
cheeseburger. That's what I always get.
Are you kidding me? You're the worst human being
At
alive.
Permani Brothers, you got a cheeseburger.
Their cheeseburger is the most delicious cheeseburger. That's what I always get. I love it there. And there was lots.
They
of,
do one thing. They do a sandwich that's
Yeah.
like a salad and a sandwich and a whole plate in one.
You were so
fistful.
excited that I went to the substation on the way back with Greg,
I was.
and you didn't even get a sandwich from Permani Brothers.
I did. It was called a cheeseburger.
That's not a sandwich.
The worst. You were the worst human being.
wow.
And there was lots of college golfing going on while we were there.
He's talking about football, isn't he?
Yes.
He's trying to make a
He's trying
he's
to.
trying to make a football reference.
So, and then Sunday was just a
I-
relax at home day.
Remember that time we were friends with him?
No,
Other,
I don't.
if you're on the Discord, you got to see. I actually went over to my brother's and got the entirety of my dad's book collection because he was tired of storing it. So I filled the bed of my truck
Oh my!
with milk crates, so I could primarily get 2 books, which I brought in.
He brought 200 home instead.
Yeah, he basically, if you're getting that book, you're getting them all. So that he just filled my truck. But if you're on the Discord, you got to see some really cool pictures, and it was really awesome to see the Loden green that Ryan's Jeep is in there. The original brown is in there. The orange that a couple other people's Jeeps is in there. It's really cool to have the factory color chips. So
Yeah,
That's fun.
I love that old literature, and I have a bunch of it stored here on site, and I'm like, man, one of these days, I keep thinking like we'll have this like little library, you know what I mean? I don't know if anybody will ever want it or need it or use it. I've been in so many guys different, and we'll probably talk about this next week, but I've been so many of these other characters who have bought out dealerships or they've bought out stuff, and I've been into their barns and their garages, and they have walls of factory service manuals or factory paint chips or aftermarket parts manuals, and I'm just like, that is the coolest thing to me, and especially when you're doing high quality restorations or wanting to educate yourself and kind of be better in the industry.
Yep.
I'm like, that's the stuff that separates the haves and the have-nots.
Yes.
And
well, it's like the paint chips. There's
Yeah.
literally the codes in there and that kind of stuff. So that's just not out everywhere anymore for information.
But my challenge is like, how do we preserve it? How do we use it? And I mean, the problem is I've talked to a number of other garage owners, that's a lot of real estate in the process.
Well, the first step is just to not let it get thrown away and not let it be in a leaky or drafty attic anymore and go from there.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things for me, even though it was a restful weekend, the thing that I did get to do and you're going to appreciate is my parents actually commissioned me to build them a overhang off the back of their house.
Nice.
For the winter season and stuff. But they had an old gazebo style metal one.
Okay.
That they bought last year, spent $1,000 on it.
Yes.
They anchored it well. The wind took it and destroyed it.
You know what?
So I said, I'm going to build you something a little bit more durable.
Yes.
They liked the pictures of your house.
Sure.
Or your shed that I built.
Yeah,
and so they're like, we want you to build and design this. So Saturday I spent time designing that.
You actually
Wednesday,
a full
I'm gonna-
gazebo or just a lean-to? is what you're saying?
I'm doing a lean-to off the house, but I'm going to do it as a pergola style.
Okay.
But with a metal roof over top of it.
Okay. Yeah, I've been channeling them because I'm so tempted. I keep thinking I'm going to do like a deck or a platform opposite the shed and put one of those metal pieces, but I keep channeling your parents in the process. I'm like, I could put $1,000 in that, or I could buy construction materials for that same price and have the whole thing done.
Yeah.
So the gazebo that they had spent $1,000 on, this is going to be $500 plus a little bit of tax.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
It's a half the price, and this is with concrete to anchor it into the ground, so it's not going anywhere.
That's what's up.
Yep.
That's
So
awesome.
that's Wednesday. I'll be doing that. That'll keep me busy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are we off?
So what? As far as the builds go, other than that, I got to watch some football and enjoy that. Steelers games obviously was really intense. I don't know if you watched any of that.
I didn't, but I did see the schedule because they were losing a good portion of it. And
So they started off real strong, and then it was a neck and neck fight all the way to the end. I mean, they won by a point because they got the Commanders to jump off sides.
I was going to say, I saw the 1 point. I told Jennifer at the end there, and I was like, I wonder what happened in that game.
It was intense.
Did they lose their golf ball? Isn't that no Steelers time?
Yeah. Anyway,